Hey up, I'm Joe Law, and this is Yellowbelly Presents, the visual podcast where we invite industry leaders to share the stories, strategies and secrets behind their creative success. Today we are lucky enough to be joined by Dame Arlene Phillips, a legendary choreographer and director whose influence spans decades. From revolutionising jazz in the UK to choreographing for music legends like Freddie Mercury, Elton John and Whitney Houston, her impact on the industry is immeasurable. She shaped some of the biggest musicals from Starlight Express to Grease, dazzled audiences with her work on film and television, with an Olivier Award, a damehood and a career that continues to inspire. We are honoured to have her here. Would like to start, if I may, with your inspirations in life, your creative inspirations. I've got a few questions that we ask all of our guests, and that is, could you share with us a song, a film, and a piece of live performance that's inspired you in your life and your career?
The song that inspired me was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, because my mum used to sing it to me. My mum died when I was 15, so she's very special. But the way she sang that song, she made the words come to life. The way I listened to it from actually being quite young. The musical that changed my life and still today is my all-time favorite musical is West Side Story. I'm absolutely passionate about it. And prior to seeing that movie, I wanted to be a ballerina. After that, it was all go
Jazz all the way.
Jazz all the way. I'm going to say the films, if that's allowed, of Charlie Chaplin.
Wow.
Because that was something I was taken to see at our local cinema, and we rarely went out anywhere. And my dad loved Charlie Chaplin. So it's any film of Charlie Chaplin resonated with me.
We think of Charlie Chaplin as an actor, but the way he moved his body to make people laugh, to make people think and cry, and he moved like a dancer, didn't he?
Yes, he certainly did. He was so physical that he started in black and white movies and absolutely in silent films. And yet he could make you cry. He could make you laugh. The way he used his body was so extraordinary. And I know we all think of the little shuffle forward with the cane, but he was so much more than that.
You mentioned there the song Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. That was sung by your mum. And your mum, you said, sadly passed away when you were 15. I've heard you speak really openly about it, and so courageously and touching. And I lost my dad a bit older, so about 26. And when you were saying the song Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, because that's what your mum used to sing, my dad had a voice like an angle grinder, so I don't think he'd ever sing. But if someone were to ask me the same question, it would probably be something like Living on a Prayer by John Bon Jovi, because it immediately brings me back to the back of his Ford Mondeo estate, and it would come on the radio or he'd have it the CD in his glove compartment, and we'd just crank it up. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whenever we think of people we love in our lives, I immediately go back to singing a song with my dad, watching cowboy films with my granddad. What is it about the arts that's so emotional and so meaningful to us all?
To us all, actually, is not necessarily available to all. You have to have parents who gift that to you, gift what it is to listen. That's why you remember those things. And that's why the arts, movement, music should be available in every school from the day kids go to school to the day they leave at 18.
When was your first memory of falling in love with dance? That first moment that you knew, this is me?
I think that was I went to dance classes when I was very young with a very strict teacher who was teaching step together, step hop. And I remember I must have been about 2.5 and her shouting across the room. And I thought, I'm not coming back. And something inside me went, you've got to join in, because if you don't, you'll never have dance in your life. And it was that moment, standing on the bar in my green ballet shoes, which I was really embarrassed about, but starting to move.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, something I knew I was going to do, no matter what the odds are, no matter what happened in my life. I was going to dance, because dance made me wanted to live a life.
Wow. What are your first memories of coming to London to try and make it as a dancer, a performer?
I always thought, the streets of London were paved in gold.
Me
That was
too.
that was my imagination. When I got there, the reality was very different.
Yeah.
I had come just for a week. I was teaching in Manchester, because I thought that was the only career. I dreamed of going to a school in London, but it wasn't going to happen. So I taught in Manchester, and then the head of the school I was at said, "There's a place in London called the Dance Centre that's just opened on Floral Street, and you can take any class of any style. I want you to go for a week in the holidays, and when you come back, I want you to bring all of this new style of dance to the school." Off I go to London, staying at the YWCA, which was then just off Tottenham Court Road. And it was a tiny little room in a hostel. But my goodness, it was like, wow. Every day I went to the dance centre. And on the final day, I went into a class with a teacher called Molly Malloy, who did American jazz, but lyrical American jazz, a cross between contemporary, classical, and jazz. I fell in love with it. And it was Friday night, and I was going home the next day. And everybody was sitting sort of around a Kona coffee pot. And I sat on the bench, and Molly was there, and she started talking to everyone. And she asked me what I was doing here. I said, well, I'm here to take classes. And I have to say, I fell in love with your class. It's like my dream. I didn't know this dance style existed. And she said, well, it was incredible, because you just took to it more than any student that's been here.
Wow.
Because I do American jazz, Luigi style. And she said, oh my God, I'd love to give you a scholarship. And I said, I can't. I've got to go back. And she said, would you have to go back? I said, yeah, I've got nowhere to live and nothing to live off. I have to go back. And she said, I know someone that's looking for someone to live in, take care of their child, and I will give you a scholarship. So you could be in London if you wanted. And on that moment, I decided I was never going home again. Because if I went home, I'd never come back. And I went, really? She said, yes. Yeah, I'll take you to meet Ridley Scott, who's looking for someone to help with his kid and help clean the house. And I was like, okay, Ridley Scott. Yeah, I've heard that name. And that's what I did. And I stayed in London. And Ridley, who had a TV company making commercials, one day asked me to choreograph a commercial, a Lion's Made ice cream commercial. I've spoken about it often, but it was a revelation. A farmer, a two-guy cow, and Miriam Margolyes as the milkmaid. And I had to teach them, little steps. And it was all milkmaidy, kind of on the farm stuff. And it was a success. And there I was, planted in London.
Just to rewind slightly, so that first moment you went to a jazz class, what was it about seeing jazz, taking a jazz class for the first time, that you fell in love with so much?
I can't even describe. It was a way of moving that I hadn't seen before. I didn't know Luigi's style of jazz. I did think that jazz was jazz hands, which I loved. I loved West Side Story because that was jazz, but it's jazz that spoke to you in a way I'd never seen before. But Molly's connection with the movement, with the way you breathe, with the way that you use every little particle of your body,
Yeah.
was there in the way Molly expressed it. And she had been a classical dancer herself at New York City Ballet, and she had the way of moving of a classical dancer, but turning it into a very contemporary feel.
Yeah.
And when I met Molly, I knew A, that we would be lifelong friends, B, that she mentored me so beautifully, but it also had given me the way forward to be bold and daring.
Yeah.
And because I knew how to teach, the one thing I could do was teach classes.
Yeah.
So I then went on to teach a modern American jazz class, which I realized everything on TV was very poppy, smiley, surface. And I wanted to do something that brought what was going on in the streets in London. Oh my God, late 60s, early 70s, vibrant, sexy, styles were changing. And so I got the best students from my class and said, I'm going to start a group. I'm going to call it Hot Gossip because I want everybody to talk about it, not having a clue what I was really going to do. And we worked with my best students who were very diverse. And I put together this little show, and I thought the world was going to love us. No way. No way. Every director I brought to see my group went, oh, no, too sexy for TV. You can't put this on television. And it was rejection, rejection, rejection.
Wow.
And we worked at a club called Monkbridge on Jermyn Street one night a week. And that club was like the hub of artists, of models, of fashion, of pop stars.
Swinging London.
All there on a tiny floor. I mean, not even as big as this studio. I took 9 of my best dancers, got clothing from every kind of new place that opened. Most of it was drag queen, leather and different kinds of sexy clothing. And off I went with this group, and they were not loved, but there was one day that turned around my life, and it was a story, right? There was a magazine called Ritz magazine, very popular at the time, and a photographer who saw us rehearsing in the dance center asked if she could take a photograph. So I got them all in their outfits, photograph, massive photograph in Ritz magazine. And that magazine was seen by a director called David Mallet, who went on to have, I mean, just a massive career in music videos, in long form, big shoots from all the famous bands in the world. And he said to his PA, I'm about to do the Kenny Everett video show. Get me Arlene Phillips, get me Hot Gossip, doesn't matter what it takes, find them. And that's what happened. They found me, asked me to put Hot Gossip on television, and we were what people think was an overnight success. It was not. We had 3 years of struggles, and the world suddenly woke up to Hot Gossip. Television woke up to Hot Gossip. Nothing like it had been on TV before. And they became an overnight sensation, as did I, because I had called the group Arlene Phillips Hot Gossip, not actually intentionally. And a woman called Mary Whitehouse objected to us immediately. She saw these sexy clothes early in the evening on a Monday night and went to the Houses of Parliament to campaign against this. We made front page of every single newspaper. And my career happened like that overnight.
What's the old phrase? It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. There's a classic
Yeah. Yeah.
story of that.
Yeah.
So that first moment when you have gone from being a dancer, a dance student, a teacher, and you first start to choreograph. If there's anyone watching or listening to this that is thinking about going into choreography for
Yeah.
the first time, how do you start? What do you do?
It's really hard to become a choreographer.
Yeah.
And mine happened by chance. So, firstly, if you want to be a choreographer, remember that even if it's a kitchen door opens, go through it.
Yeah.
Take whatever you can to forward what you want to do. The other thing is passion and desire. Passion and desire has to come with a lot of hard work and also a lot of rejection. And in any role whatsoever, in theatre, in film, in television, being an actor, being a dancer, if you can't face rejection, don't go there.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you find yourself facing rejection all the time. So you have to have like a steely stance to say, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
As a choreographer, try, if you're going to do a show, if you're in the ensemble, look to try to be a dance captain. Look to take that step. Watch everything everybody does. Learn everything everybody does. So somebody will suddenly go, hey, can anybody remember that thing we did? I think it was about, I don't know, 5 hours ago. We did something. Who can remember it? Be the one. Be the dancer that remembers it. Try to go from a dance captain to an assistant to an associate. Constantly climb the ladders. Look to a choreographer. You can get in touch with anybody these days.
Yeah.
You can message anyone. You can get in touch with them. You can target your work for people that might help. What you must remember is I am going to do this and I am going to make sure I am seen, my voice is heard, and don't be afraid to target choreographers.
That you're going to succeed no matter what. No one's going to get in your way, no amount of rejection. This is going to happen because I'm going to do it and I love it and this is who I am and what I do.
Absolutely.
Which is completely your spirit and your energy and everything that you embody. Your work ethic is legendary. You have worked and worked and worked and grafted, and every career definitely takes a certain amount of luck. But I feel like you're being a little bit self-deprecating when you say that your career is entirely down to luck. I seem to think that with your drive and passion and hard work, that you'd have been exactly where you are now regardless.
Yeah, I think, yes, I do. But I think there are twists and turns.
Yeah,
and
of
you
course.
may not recognize they're the step you need to take, but you can actually take those steps and really think about them. The time when I was choreographing, there were not a lot of female choreographers.
Yeah.
So obviously, that was a fight. But also the opportunity to take whatever it is in dance you can. Like I was lucky because I was working with David Mallet at the birth of MTV. Now, he worked with a company, a very small company at the time, making music videos. So I was on the scene. Well, his company made the very first music video ever. But then I was on that scene. And so I was night and day making one music video to the next, to the next, to the next. Aretha Franklin one day, Rod Stewart the next. It was crazy. And as you say, Whitney, Elton, Freddie Mercury, Queen, the group. It just was on and off a plane. Diana Ross. I lived my life on an aeroplane. But you have to take those opportunities.
Yeah.
and musical theatre came along because I was making a film called Can't Stop the Music in 1979, where they asked me to learn to roller skate, and I was pregnant with my first daughter. And so the producers hadn't realised I hadn't been insured to be on roller skates. And one day he walked in and said, "Get that girl off these skates. Get her off these skates. Didn't anyone remember to insure her?" And so Andrew Lloyd Webber was a big fan of Hot Gossip, and we had met through that. And he called me up just after I told him the story of this roller skating madwoman in 1979, pregnant, and I was with my little baby at the time. And then in 1983, he called me up and said, "I'm going to do a show on roller skates. Will you choreograph it?" You know, completely from one story. And who even remembers from 1979 to 1983? I was astonished he'd remembered I roller skated. And Starlight Express opened my world to musical theatre. So I think for everyone, there's ups, there's downs, but you've got to be there with your eyes open, listening, and trying to find that moment you can step in and take over.
That's so beautifully articulated. I don't think we think about that so often. How many doors will be open to you if you push and try, but you've got to recognise that doors are being opened, because if you overlook them somehow, if you don't see them, if you don't fully recognise that a door's been opened for you and then in turn go for it, heart and soul.
Yes. And you never know when something can take you to the path that you desire. I was watching a contemporary dance competition once, and it was run by Matthew Bourne, and he awarded the winner an opportunity to work with his company. And there was a very young dancer who won, called James Cousins. And that evening, he came up to me and we spoke, and I said how wonderful his little piece of work was, very exciting. He said, "Yes, I've always wanted to do musical theatre, but, for now it's so exciting to meet you." Then that was our first connection. Then I saw a little post and it said, "Can anybody help getting my company to Edinburgh? We've been invited to Edinburgh Festival and we've got accommodation, but we need transportation." And it was just this little thing. And I went, "Oh, that's James Cousins." And I got in touch and said, "Well, what do you need?" It wasn't really that much money to get them there. And that was the end of that. Then when he got back, he said to me, got back from Edinburgh, "We had a wonderful time. I think I'm going to do Matthew Bourne's company, but I'm still going to keep my company running. But if I ever could find a chance, because I'm free, to shadow you, would you let me?" And I said, "James, the only thing I've got right now is a workshop of Starlight, and it's in Germany." And he went, "Oh." I said, "Look, I will help you. Do you need some fares or accommodation?" He said, No, I can get the I can get the airplane, I can get the flight." I said, "Okay, I'll find somewhere for you to stay and come for a week." And he came, shadowed me for a week. Then I was offered, we got back to do an immersive production of Midsummer Night's Dream. And I asked if I could have an assistant. And I went, I wonder if James would be interested in something like this. Well, we worked together on Nick Heitner's immersive production of Midsummer Night's Dream with Gwendolyn Christie. And then from then on, he became my assistant. He became my associate. He then went and we together did Guys and Dolls, and we still work together, and we've got more things coming up. And that was just someone taking a chance on talking to a choreographer, following it up by, "Can I come in, just shadow you?" And, we have been, I would say, friends and artists working together ever since.
And in case people didn't know, anyone watching or listening, you won the Olivier together last year for Guys and Dolls.
Yes, we did.
Woo!
So
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
during the speech, your acceptance speech, um, James gave such a lovely show of emotion towards you, and he called you his mentor. It says a lot about you that you've done incredible things in your career. You've risen to the top of the industry of choreography, and you've remembered that it's important to help others to get where you are as well. Because I imagine it's very easy to forget that.
Yeah, you can just go along without thinking about it. But I appreciate all my assistants and associates, and I've been very lucky because they will come back again and again, and
Hmm.
whatever the title is, constantly moving up because I want to give that to them,
Yeah.
because I want to promote their careers. And I have such a good working relationship, and I'm very lucky that they're always there.
And that's such a brilliant bit of advice from you telling us about James Cousins' story. Sometimes doors get opened for you, but sometimes you've got to open them for yourself.
Oh, you
He reached out to you and asked
and
you. Sometimes you've got to be a bit brave, haven't you?
yeah,
And
yeah.
go, I'm going to give this a shot. What's choreography like for people who perhaps haven't experienced it yet? Can it be a clash of wills sometimes, or can it be two different artistic voices that come together to make something even more beautiful than any one choreographer could do
Yeah.
individually?
It's very interesting. You have to really know and trust the person you're working with
Yeah,
so that you can give and you can listen.
yeah, yeah, of
That
course.
that there are no barriers. You have to, and we spend a lot of time exploring what it's going to be. I'm very much guided by music, lyrics, storytelling,
Yeah,
and how do you express those. Um, Often it's a piece of music that you don't particularly like, and that's harder.
yeah,
If you love the music, it's telling you what to do.
yeah, yeah.
You are physically sort of responding to it. If it's a song you don't like, you have to kind of crank up and think about what you're going to do. And it's good to be able to share those moments.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter how long you've been choreographing. Um, there is there is always a place to listen. I've directed and choreographed, but I love working with directors and actually listening to directors. And one of the most extraordinary and popular things was in Guys and Dolls was Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat.
Oh my God.
And partly because Cedric Neal, our, very first Nicely Nicely,
Mm.
he was brought up as a gospel singer. He was singing in church. He then went on to study opera, and by chance, he was offered a role in musical theatre. So he has all of these things. And I found Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. And from sitting in a theatre to be taken somewhere where your body is goosebumps everywhere and you feel like your spirit has been lifted. You feel like you're in another place. It's elevated. And listening and working with music is so important. And therefore, when you're working with an associate, with a co-choreographer, your response to the music,
Mm.
and when it comes together. But Nick Heitner, after seeing what was created for Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat, actually had some chairs, but a lot of dance in between the aisles. And then Nick looked at it and said, everyone has to have a chair. So that meant I had thought that the non dancers would be sitting on their chairs,
Hmm.
singing away, and the dancers would be doing some dance. Everybody in a chair doing the same thing at the same time was Nick's instructions. And I remember going back and working, like at first, like, oh, I've created this great choreography. They're doing this and they're doing this, and then we need some room. No. And back in that room, reworking it, finding and using the limitations.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment when I went, we have 4 sides, and that point when everyone lifted the chairs and turned them around, and everyone lifted the chairs. So you actually facing all 4 sides for part of the show, but still being able to see over who was up on a chair and down. But that was the most joyous thing. And I had with me at that time not just James, but our dance captains, Charlotte and Dale. And it was just like a revelation as we discovered what we could do. And Nick was right.
Yeah.
Everybody needed a chair.
So you said just then that you love working with directors. Can that be a complicated relationship, a complicated process sometimes? Is it always plain sailing? Do you always have to defer to a director? Sometimes you have to fight for your artistic vision. For those of us who haven't worked with a director in our careers yet, how do you navigate that?
I think it's pick your battles.
Wise words.
Because, you know, even you can tell by the program.
Yeah.
The director is there.
Yeah.
The choreographer, you know. The director is the top of the tree.
Yeah.
And so you do often have to listen because they are overseeing the story they want to tell. And you are creating the story you want to tell through movement. And sometimes what you want, actually Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat is a classic example of a choreographer wanting to see some very clever dance, and it was the way we used it. But ultimately, at first, you know, thinking, oh my God, how are we going to do it? Some of the actors who are integrated into the show, certainly in Crapshooter's ballet, the way we use the actors, going from the most complex moments to the simplest moments, we were given the opportunity to make that happen with dance and non-dancers. Here, everything had to be accessible to pretty much non-dancers.
Yeah.
And yet to make it live, we managed.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was definitely Nick's choice, the director's choice. And I have thanked him in my heart every day since he said everyone has to sit on a chair, which meant there was barely room to even move out at the sides.
Yeah.
I think listening to a director is good advice, but when you're absolutely, totally 100% fixed on something, don't back down.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't be afraid to speak and give a reason.
Pick your battles. I think that's such wise, sage advice, I think. You can't fight every single day, but if there's something you're particularly passionate about in terms of the vision of the piece, then stick up for yourself because you definitely do sometimes. You mentioned there that in Guys and Dolls, and I'm sure in other pieces you've worked on, working with non-dancers. How's that as a choreographer? Is it kind of easier? Is it harder? Is it?
Where it becomes hard is if at that moment a dancey dance is required.
Yeah.
It takes so much time.
Yeah.
You can get everybody there. You know, I always say if you can walk, you can dance. And very often, particularly when I'm doing music videos and working with stars who don't dance, we just walk up and down, up and down, up and down. Just get walking, just get moving. Find your walk. If you find your walk, you'll find your dance. But it is harder, and that's why it's important that even as a choreographer, you're also a movement director.
Yeah.
So make everyone look good and make your work cohesive. So actors and dancers can join together and make it look like everybody moves in exactly the way you want.
You've spoken before very openly and honestly about your experience in ballet classes when you were small, and all the girls with the traditionally slim, long legs were putting the pink leotards at the front,
Oh, yeah.
and you and your friends were put at the back. I mean, that must have. How was that? I can't even imagine
Oh.
how difficult, horrible that must have been to
It
go through.
huh, it's awful, actually, when I think back to it. Being the unwanted in the in the class, you know, too plump, too this, too that. Never the perfection that the ballet teacher wanted, and there's no way you're ever going to be.
Mm.
Beautifully kind of slender ballerinas with uh, beautiful feet and the kind of the body that just works so easily are not in everybody's gift.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, that my friend Olga and I, who were at the back, we both became teachers in that ballet school.
Wow.
We both became teachers because we knew everything that we had to do.
Yeah.
Because that was our knowledge. We may not have all the beauty and the grace of the perfect ballerinas,
Yeah.
but you certainly knew how to teach it. And you certainly could analyze what the beautiful dancers needed. And we both became teachers in the same ballet school. So, something came out of it. But being there and persevering through every dinkin insult that we got throughout the period of time I was there, from 8 until 22. I mean, including teaching. I stuck it out. She wasn't going to get me down.
I think the higher the obstacles you've been forced to climb, the higher the ability you have to climb. And if you get there, obviously it's easier said than done. But like you say, limitations, or we wouldn't see them as limitations now. We see everyone as having different bodies and beauties, many different things, whereas I don't think it was seen that way perhaps in times gone past. Now, often growth only happens through painful experience, I find. As annoying as that can be and difficult as it can be to go through.
Yeah.
But you've come through the other side of that, like you said, because you were forced to attain a greater knowledge of dance. You and your friend Olga became teachers because you didn't have it all given to you.
Absolutely. No, it was fight for every step.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
again, both of us came from backgrounds where parents were struggling to keep us in the school.
Is it easier now for dancers, for performers from working class backgrounds like yourself, or is it harder? Has anything improved in your time, or is it still...
We're really going backwards, because there was a time when dance became a subject in school that everybody could attend.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's tough. It's still as tough. It's tough to get money. It's not easy.
We're blessed in a sense with technology. I think in some senses it might be easier to make your own work. So although most of the obstacles, sounds like, haven't been removed, I don't think things sound much easier at all for other little Arlenes out there right now who don't have much money for dance classes and want to make it in that world. But what's a bit nicer now, hopefully, I think a film that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and it was entirely filmed on an iPhone. You could do hot gossip on your phone now, or the modern equivalent of hot gossip. You can get some pals together from your dance class and choreograph them and put it out there on YouTube, and it could get 1 million views, or TikTok, or hopefully it's easier for that drive, that inward passion and desire to express itself. You're not having to hire expensive film equipment and dance studios, and so hopefully dance and the arts are a bit more meritocratic in that way.
Oh, I think that, the world of dance has been exposed through TikTok.
Yeah.
I mean, without fail, there are opportunities to do your work, to target people with your work.
Mm.
It definitely opens a huge world. The only problem is there's millions doing it.
Yeah.
And how do you get your work up there? What do you do that makes a difference? And people do. I mean, definitely look at all the influencers that just do something crazy, wacky, different. But bingo, they're there. They're there for you to see. And they are just gaining and gaining and gaining and growing.
When you're choreographing for screen as opposed to stage, what are the different considerations as a choreographer? Is it exactly the same, or is it two different styles you have to have in mind?
As a choreographer, I don't think the difference between TV and stage is to do with style.
Yeah.
It's how your work is exposed. So
Okay.
on stage, you're filling the stage, or you're telling a story that the audience can relate to because of what you're doing physically. On television, you have to build those camera shots. It's what you want to tell the audience, but you have to make sure constantly that camera is helping to tell your story.
Yeah.
So sometimes, particularly, with music videos or film, you're shooting in tiny little pieces. And everyone has to flow into it and flow out of it.
Mm-hmm.
On stage, you can do a number that's 5 minutes long and everybody will love it. It will build and build and build. To do that 5 minutes on television could take hours.
Hours and hours and days
Hours
and
and
days, I
hours.
imagine,
Yes,
sometimes.
and days and days.
I was watching some of your music videos, and I definitely saw an Arlene Phillips visual language. The way you play with perspective. In the Whitney Houston video and I'm Still Standing, Elton John. And there's moments where Elton John's in the foreground, whether it could be an extreme close-up on his hand clicking in time to the music, or his face, and or even a shot from like the knees down with his legs, and then the dancers in the background. But you could definitely see exactly what you've just beautifully described there. To try and keep the screen in mind, try and lead the director around the shots that you want and how you want your dance, your vision to be portrayed on the screen.
I was very lucky because when I was making music videos, I worked with 3 directors, David Mallet, Russell Mulcahy, and Brian Grant, all in the same company. So together, we would work out what we were going to do before. I mean, obviously, sometimes we get to the space and it didn't work out, but a lot of it was plotted before. Particularly like with Freddie Mercury, he wanted to know everything that was happening throughout that music video. Unlike Elton John said, "I'll turn up, tell me what to do." Freddie was involved. And when I made a music video, it was Freddie, not with Queen, I Was Born to Love You.
Yeah.
We had 360 dancers on Canary Walk before one brick had gone up on Canary Wharf as we know it today. It was just a
like
bomb
a marshland.
site. Yeah, absolutely. And today you'd have one girl and you'd multiply them by 360, but there we have 360 dancers. I had a great big megaphone, but all of the shots we had worked out before. We were there like at 5 a.m. in the morning, scouting the location and working out all of the camera shots ready. So again, music videos were mostly or usually one day, and those days were very long. Go through till midnight. So if you didn't plot everything, you just can't you can't really get what you need to get done
Yeah.
before either the star is flying off. I mean, what Elton John, I'm Still Standing, was an example of how, as a choreographer, you have to be on your toes.
Mm.
We had planned that Elton John, the music video, he was going to start up in the mountains in the south of France and drive down the mountains in an open top car. And when he gets to the promenade, they were going to put a sugar glass screen, and Elton was going to burst through it into where you could see the sea, the sand. When we actually arrived in the south of France, it was all changed. They police didn't think it was safe to drive down that mountain road and break through the sugar glass. So we were like, what are we going to do? I had a friend who opened a dance school in the south of France. So I called her up and said, have you got any dancers? Can you they've got to be over, I think it was over 16 at the time, over 16. And she said, yeah, I've got loads, amazing dancers. So I said, okay, can you tell them to come, and we're going to just bring bikinis, shorts, summery costumes, and we're all going to meet at the promenade at such time. She said, I'll round up my best dancers.
Mm-hmm.
We had brought over Bruno, because Bruno was going to sit in the back of the car. Bruno Tonioli was going to sit in the back of the car. And he at the time was teaching dance classes for me. And we've been friends for years. So that was who we had. Terrifying. And then Russell McKay, who was directing, said, we're going to body paint everybody. Let's get body paints out.
There's some beautiful body paint in that video.
I choreographed that on the spot with dancers I didn't know, from Elton to walking down, the promenade in Nice and all the dancers behind him, going into the Negresco because Elton can get anything he wanted, finding the staircase, choreographing it, everything on the beach. It was instant choreography with the dancers in their whatever they had to wear. And it was, talk about alert. I was so on edge that day. How fast could I teach them something that they could then film and shoot?
And that sounds like, although it was a situation that was perhaps forced on you, it's a situation where this whole incredible, iconic music video just came out of you, and rather than one of those times where you've been painstakingly considering every step for months.
Yeah, there was no time.
Yeah.
Even Elton, getting him to do his little click.
Was there a sense, because music videos were brand new at the time, completely new art form, was there a sense that you were doing something new and exciting and exploring a completely different medium?
We knew, what we said was, we're just making it up.
Yeah.
We would just sit down and go, well, this idea would look good for this music video. Yes, it was. And I remember sitting in, Freddie had a beautiful house where the parties were held, and then he had a flat where it was like a basement flat. That was where we worked, and going through what we're going to do. He wanted to know of every music video I did with him, what the idea was going to be. And it's just so lovely. But it is a time of my life when I think back, and I working with Aretha Franklin, then going to Diana Ross. I felt like I worked with Whitney Houston, Tina Turner. I did all of the iconic singers.
Yeah.
And it was just such a special time, and so unique, because we were just making it up, often on the spot.
Yeah.
With Tina Turner, Private Dancer, we arrived at the Rivoli Ballroom. It had just been condemned because they found asbestos, and it looked like it had been condemned. It was ready to close, and we had that last day there making that music video. I was creating it up creating it on the day. We got the dancers together, doing little bits of choreography, beautiful dancers, wonderful dancers. And we were all given orange boxes to sit on. And when the shots were, we were setting up shots, Tina would sit on her orange box, surrounded by the dancers, not just telling her life story, but asking them about their lives.
Yeah.
And we went on till late in the night because Tina was off the next day, and we had to complete that music video. Those experiences I will never forget. I've been so lucky that I could have these unbelievable, experiences. Whitney, How Will I Know was her first music video where she had to move or dance, and I was quite shy about it, and then when I went to New York a bit later to do I Want to Dance with Somebody, there was Whitney, the star.
Yeah, wow.
But on that first one, it's such an incredible life I have.
Dame Arlene, we're coming towards the end of our pod today. Just wanted to say thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for all the wisdom and fun and joy you've brought to our listeners, to us, to our podcast. So thank you very much. If we may, we're going to end on one final question, and that is, if you could choreograph anybody, alive or dead, who would that be?
Wow. I have to say Michael Jackson.
Oh, what would you do you have a vision for what that would be?
You know what? Michael Jackson came to see Starlight Express and loved it and wanted to play Rusty. He wanted to play Rusty in the theatre or on a film. Somehow he just wanted to play Rusty. And Rusty in Starlight Express is the most, I think, appealing of all the characters. He's a train that has been overlooked and dismissed. So everything Rusty does is, in many ways, trying to show I am somebody. I'm not nobody.
Yeah.
So I think within the movement that I would give would be exploring how do you come from being a nobody to a somebody through movement.
Wow. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, Dame Arlene Phillips, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You don't have to, but if you fancied it, give us a follow. Lots of love, and we'll see you on the next one.
That was it, baby. That was it. Get loaded. Print it.